This is hopefully going to answer a lot of your questions, give you some real good insight into the overall project. A couple of quick disclaimers. I'm hard of hearing, so if I don't see you and you talk, I may not hear you. So I cleaned everything up and got them working good today just for this event. But please remember, I do have a problem with my hearing. The other thing is, I'll go ahead and apologize to you now. I'm not a lecturer. I'm an instructor. So those of you, you know the difference. This isn't going to be, I'm going to teach you or anything. I'm kind of stepping out of my element just a little bit, but I have taught a lot, so we'll move on. I don't stand still. That's another problem I have. So, yeah. I'm sorry. My name is Robbie Horton. I'm the city manager. I'm going to get over here so everybody will, if I get over here. Anyway, y'all will get the idea. I am Robbie Horton. I'm the city manager. In the back, we've got Mr. Charlie Williams. He's the assistant city manager. We do have some of our council members present. But I'm going to be the one presenting, okay? I'm going to try and answer your questions. I've seen the emails that have been going around, and I think we're going to answer a lot of them. I'm even going to stop at the end and go through, make sure that we've addressed as many of them as we possibly can. And I think you're going to get a better picture of what we're trying to do here. This is a public-private collaboration. This is not something that a normal development. Normal developments, we'll be sitting in the office and someone will come to us and go, we want to develop property. Okay? That's not what this is. This was the city of St. Mary's recognizing this was a prime opportunity and a prime location for development and economic growth for the city of St. Mary's. We approached Radiant. Okay? So that kind of changes how things work sometimes. But we're going to spend some time. We're going to try and get down in the weeds a little bit. Yes, sir. You want questions as we go, or? I tell you what, at the end of each slide, y'all stick your hands up. How's that? That way I don't forget what you said and you don't forget what I said. That'll work. All right? But if I do see we're getting bogged down, we are held to a time limit of 2 hours, and hopefully we'll get out of here a reasonable hour, folks. All right. So that we recognize as the city, this is our front door. This is who we are. We want people coming off the interstate to look to the left. If you're coming from the south looking and you get off on the interstate, you look to the left and you see Kingsland, you look to the right and you see St. Mary's. We want something that is inviting, but also something that is respectful to the history of who we are as a city. That was one of the requirements that we asked Radiant at the very beginning, that we don't want anything, we don't want you to just come in and develop. We want you to come in, we want you to make something that, and y'all, I'm sorry for using the term, but I'm going to, okay? We want something that sparkles, that grabs the attention of whoever it is, and they look towards St. Mary's and they go, hey, that's cool. Let's go see what that is. You know, if this is here, I wonder what's at the end of the road. Something that brings people to our city as tourists, visitors, maybe even move here, okay? But we don't want to lose who we are as a city, okay? This is my home. My family has been raised here. The lady third row back right here on the end actually taught one of my children, and I'll be ever indebted to her because she tolerated that child better than I did. Anyway, that being said, so that's how we approached Radiant. Okay? Charlie, if you would. So we went into, there is the signed agreement. Everybody has a copy, or you should have a copy in the back. There's a slide presentation. There's also the developer's agreement, and there is also a report from KB Advisory, which is our financial group that evaluates projects and tells us if we can afford it or not. Okay? So, but in the agreement, what we agreed to, can y'all see? Okay. If I get in the way, tell me to move. Okay? Fair game. The city agreed to lead in working with all stakeholders to illustrate its character and future so it can retain its small town charm while fostering a vibrant economy. Same thing I just said. I don't really want to read all this stuff to you because you've got a copy of it. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay. The big key point on this particular slide is read the very last one. The city views this annexation as critical to achieving its objectives for economic expansion, infrastructure improvements, and aesthetic changes with the goal of creating a more attractive, livable, and prosperous community. Okay? Folks, in some of the emails that we've seen, people have asked the question, well, why are we worried about it? Because it's in St. Mary's. The property that we're looking at is not in the city of St. Mary's. That's the reason one of the first things we have to do is annex that property into St. Mary's. Okay? So if we don't annex it in, and they come anyway, it ain't going to be in the city of St. Mary's. It's going to be in some other government's picture, so to speak. Okay? So can you imagine, and I'm just giving you an illustration, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, y'all, okay? But imagine instead of seeing St. Mary's on one of the monuments, it says the city of Kingsland, or it says Camden County. That's our doorway. That's our doorway, the city of St. Mary's. Okay? That's the reason we're acting. That's the reason we approached them. That's the whole reason for many years since 1995. And several mayors have worked to try and get this in here. A couple of them are in a room. Okay? This is our doorway. We want to protect it. Okay? So if you will, Charlie, y'all mind if I have a swig of Coke? I normally don't work from behind the microphone because you can tell I've got a big mouth. But this is the current demographics of the city of St. Mary's. This is current census data that was produced. It talks about the per capita income, the median income, our population 18,321. The number of households 7,172, which has grown since that time. The average age of St. Mary's is 35.7. The median value of owner-occupied housing units, 195,300. Okay? That's just a quick snapshot of who we are. We need to know who we are, right? So that's what the purpose is. The yellow that you see illustrated, that is the city boundaries as it sits right now. Okay? You see, this is the property that we're talking about. It's not in the city of St. Mary's. Okay? Going back to 2017, the St. Mary's Master Plan, the front door to St. Mary's, it talks about how hard citizens worked, how hard employees worked to develop the master plan. In the master plan, it breaks it down. Key things to focus here, the focus on economic development, developing the mill, the airport site, as well as strengthening the corridor from midtown to downtown as a precursor to many of the long-term goals of thing. Annexation of unincorporated islands in the city and the area west of the city to exit 1 on I-95. That's the property we're talking about here, folks. Okay, so this has been in the works for a long time. Charlie, what are we going to take off? There's some folks in the room every time we get in a conversation about the master plan that want to know what are we taking off our master plan. With this project, we can put check marks by conservation, developing residential, island residential, interstate access corridors. I think we can address some of the, well, there's not a whole bunch of residential marshland. Mixed use medical, multi-use development. It takes some big check marks off of our list. Charlie? Most of you are aware of the projects that we have currently going on in St. Mary's. We've got the Jacoby project, which is located on the old mill site. That is in the process. S&G Blocks, that is located at the Commerce Park, also known as the old St. Mary's Airport. It's not just S&G. We have PEMB. We have Structural Innovations, I think is the other name, and we have a fourth one that has contacted us in the last week, which is news to my bosses, which didn't know that. Oops, I missed that one. But we've got a fourth one that is also interested in buying property there and developing light industrial. Okay. You also have future development opportunities up around Gilligan's Island area. We have several developers that are looking into those areas for future development. And of course, our new opportunity, which is our Exit 1 opportunity. So executing the city master plan, we engaged with Radiant discussions of 2020. March of 2022, the agreement between the parties was signed that outlined the framework of accompanying key goals, annexation of the property being one of the big ones, PD for mixed-use development, St. Mary's Road beautification plan, strategic public infrastructure improvements, identifying funding sources. The goal was to have adoption by December 5th by the City Council on plan development. Okay? I don't see any hands, so we're all. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I hear you. Yes, ma'am. I got you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I understand that. Okay. One of the big questions is why was there a non-disclosure area of information? Non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreement. Why was that put in there? That is typically what Radiant does anytime they start developing a project. Until it's rolled out and things were public, that's when we're able to roll the stuff out. We're putting it out here. I'm not trying to rush or anything. I'm just telling you what transpired. Okay? Why would they want a non-disclosure? It is very intense. It is very intense. You're absolutely correct. They're just very guarded when it comes to their projects. That's just their business model. That's how they've done it. Yes, ma'am. I can totally understand that from a private corporation perspective, but the problem is the timeline from when you can disclose it to the public when the public city council has to vote on it. That's the issue. It's not the working beforehand and getting all the public, private stuff, all that. It's the timeline. So you can reveal it to the public on this date, and in my case, you must vote on it on this date. Why is that timeline so short? That's what was laid out in the developer's agreement. That's the reason you have a copy of that agreement now. That vote doesn't take place on December 5th. What are the consequences? We're in violation of agreement. So then that's the question from a public perspective. Why was that agreement entered into on our behalf? I think that's the question. We're all feeling very quickly. And I'm not trying to take away from that whatsoever. Okay. And folks, I'm not going to satisfy every question, but I'm going to try and address them. Okay. It's just the way the timeline was laid out. That's the best thing I can tell you at this point in time.
I think we're going to have either 3 or 4 new council people on Jack 2. So regardless of how they feel about it, when they step on board, they're going to why we wouldn't want the entire council going forward. We're only talking about less than 30 days. Why not have the council vote on it at that time?
I hate this thing, y'all. I really do. See if I can get it more where I'm at. Ma'am? Yeah. And there was a news release and it was in them paper. That still doesn't address your concerns. There was on the front page of the newspaper when we signed the agreement. Okay. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'm gonna try and hold the room, guys. All right. Hold on. If you don't mind, let me ask her.
Two things. One, you said we're trying not to make discussions, but we are making them. Second comment is that this is so very important for Radiant, to Radiant. Why don't we ask for an extension?
Yes, ma'am. We have talked to them. They've got to give us a little bit of flexibility, but not a lot.
How much?
Basically till the middle of December.
No, this is a terrible time of year. We all have our minds on Santa Claus, etc.
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't have this. This has been pushed on us too quickly.
I hear what you're saying. Yes, ma'am.
Understand the gesture.
Yes, ma'am. I hear what you're saying, ma'am.
So you said you don't have this vote by December 5th. You're in violation of the agreement. What are the penalties for that violation? Are they going to fold their tent and leave?
I don't know.
So is there any penalty for that violation?
They can take us to court.
And say what?
Well,
Did you agree to annex the property? You didn't promise them you'd annex it.
yes, sir, as a part of the development
You
agreement.
promised them you would annex it.
No, as a part of if you read the developers agreement, that's the reason I gave you that agreement. And I realize y'all haven't had a chance to read that, but there's several components that we have to do as a city for them to come into the city. It's agreement. We want you, and we're willing to do this if you're willing to do that.
But if you don't have that vote by December 5th, what's Radiant going to do?
Well, and like I said, they've given us a little bit of a flexibility because we've got to get some things locked down, and we'll have them locked down by the 19th meeting.
I
December
don't
19th.
have an opposition to annexing the property. I'm fine with that. I don't have any opposition.
Yes, sir.
It's just the whole rest of this. Annexing the property to me is a no-brainer. You don't want Kingston to do it because if you don't, they will. That's fine.
Yes, sir. Well, in order to annex in, there's certain things they've got to have security-wise in order to annex. Radiant.
Why do they have
Yes, sir. If you'll read, folks, please. And I know you're asking a lot of questions, but it's in that developers agreement, and I would ask that you please read that, and it'll clarify some of your questions.
So I have a question because of the base. My understanding that when the base put in, St. Mary's Road was made as a way
Yes,
for
ma'am.
people to get in and out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So they did not have to have stoplights.
And
But I agree, you're going to be putting stoplights.
if you will,
Let me finish. Also, that exit is high truck traffic,
yes, ma'am.
both sides of the freeway.
Yes, ma'am.
How are they addressing something like this?
If-
I mean, are they ignoring it, or are they willing to accept? I mean, have you seen the truck traffic?
Yes, ma'am, I have. My child got ran off the road at that intersection. I'm very much aware of it. But please, and I'm not trying to be ugly, please, I'm trying to be respectful. I address that in these presentations, if you'll let me get through it, okay? And folks, it's like I said at the beginning, we're not necessarily going to agree on everything, okay? Please understand that.
Can you summarize the city's deliverables?
It's coming. Stay put.
Know what we're getting if this comes. If it stays in the county, they can do anything they want. And anyone can do anything they want. We all remember that.
Okay. And folks, thank you. Let's work through the process. Let's go through the slides, and we'll get there. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
You said that if we didn't go ahead and buy their deadline, they might sue.
It's one of the alternatives.
Okay, I understand also, or it's my understanding that we're partners.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't usually sue my partner.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was wondering, Radiant has worked with Julie.
Yes, ma'am.
Have they sued Julie? Have they sued Julie?
Yes, ma'am, they have.
And who paid for that?
As far as who?
I bet you anything, Julie City Council had to pay for it.
Well, they probably did, because if my understanding is correct, they lost.
So we're talking
Okay,
about.
we're talking about two different things, though. Okay? Please understand that. Just because Yulee's across the line, that don't mean this is going to be another wildlight. I don't know who, well, I do know who coined it. This is not going to be Wildlight 2.0. I'm sorry, it's not. This is going to be St. Mary's. Because we have been very clear about that in our process. There's components of it, there's development processes to go through, still left to go. Yes, sir.
I didn't have it today, so.
No, that's fine.
It says you agree to get a copy of the annex within 240 days of the agreement, which was March 22nd, March 21, 22. And then it says, the city may extend the target annexation date for such additional time as necessary for an additional 90 days. You can extend this 90 days with no issue. You're not tied to that December 5th. Your own agreement says you can extend it 90 days. So why are we not extending it 90 days? Why are we rushing?
Okay.
And that's a fair question.
And I don't necessarily have that answer for you, to be honest.
That would be a good answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So why are we engaged in this, folks? Here's the bottom line. You can look on this slide. It talks about the economic benefits from the operation of what's anticipated on the project, and that comes straight out of KB advisory document that you have. The big one is the one that's circled. It's going to increase our tax bases by 90% on property tax. Okay? So that means that you've got other people help carrying the share of the tax load for the city. Okay?
That means the taxes are going to go down for us?
No. But it's not, what that means is it's not going to skyrocket the way it could, is what that means. Okay? I'm not going to say we're not going to raise taxes. I'm not going to say that. Okay? I didn't say that. I said it's not going to skyrocket like it could. This company, KB, let me go ahead and address it. KB Advisory, thank you for bringing that up. KB Advisory is a leader in the state of Georgia and they've done work all over the state, and they are the ones to get when you start looking at projects. They're also do them in other states and other things. Mr. Bill.
I'd like to hear this presentation. I ask everyone, why not wait until the end with these questions?
Okay.
I mean, it's just, throwing everything off. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Ma'am?
I like this, the way you present something and right away I can ask the question.
Yeah.
Because by the end,
Okay. All right. So if you will, y'all can look at the additional numbers in your reports. You can actually look on the KB advisory report. It breaks it all out. But this is, go ahead, Charlie. All right, the development summary. When you annex in property, you have to zone it in as something. So this property is being zoned in as a PD, which means it's a blank slate. We've got to figure it out as development starts to occur. Okay? There's projected uses like we know in that upper north corner where you see the little red F. that is going to be the warehouses or the light industrial space for the project. Okay? That's 1.2 million square feet of potential warehouse space. The F is symbolizing a fire station. But those numbers can move. Okay? There's nothing says that you have to have those things specific. But this is a real good according to what Radiant produced and then KB took and they've seen in the past and were able to build out what they thought and how it would build out.
So I think it's what concerns, one of the things that concerns me is when I look at this and I compare it to what they did with wildlife.
This is pretty, we're at that point though.
It is the same. And wildlife, it's my understanding now, has a large number of those.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, at this point, 90% of when a developer comes in and does a PD, you will probably see a majority of that stuff on any, not just Radiant, just about any, because that's the way a PD is laid out. As a plan, PD stands for planned development. Okay? So if you look over. And that's it turned out to be a bad slide. My apologies. This is the development process, folks. The top line is where we're at. Okay, that's the process we're going through with the annexation, the zoning map amendment, the tax allocation district. Annexation, we've talked about that, is currently in Camden County. It is not in either city. So we need to get it into St. Mary's. That's what annexation is. But in order to do that, we have to make a zoning map amendment. Why do we have to do that? Because it's right now it's called agriculture, and we're bringing it into the city, and we've got to call it something. Okay? So that's the reason we have to go through and we have to identify how the properties are going to be used. The tax allocation district, we're going to talk more about this. That's you've heard us talk about TADs. We have one on the Jacoby project. This is where the funding source for this entire project is going to come from. Sorry?
Infrastructure.
It helps us pay for the infrastructure, roads, and all this other stuff. We'll talk about that more in just a minute as well. I'm going to address it. Okay? Once this is done, this first phase is done, then we're going to move into site development plans. Even Radiant they haven't marketed this thing yet. They've got people knocking on their door, but they haven't marketed this whole site. So they've got to get through this phase in order to roll it out and be able to figure out exactly what's going to be there. It's more site-specific zoning that has to happen, and that goes through the planning commission. Then from there, they do the preliminary plat. That they've got an idea this is exactly how it's going to roll out. Then they go through the engineering phase, the final plat. Then we begin the building process, and that's where we build a building. They go through the same thing. If you're from St. Mary's and you work anywhere else and you're involved in the building industry, you found out that probably St. Mary's is probably one of the biggest sticklers when it comes down to the building process. Land disturbance permit, which is how it affects our wetlands, moving dirt and things of that nature. We're very, very strict on that. A lot stricter than a lot of our counterparts. So that's kind of how it goes, and then you get down to certificate of occupancy. Okay? But that's the development process. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for bringing up the point. That's the reason it's collaborative. Okay? We've got a say-so at the table. The city of St. Mary's has a say-so at the table. Say again?
Sounds like a small one.
It's probably bigger than you think.
You're telling us what's gonna happen, and we have a little, you hear feedback, but it's like, well, don't sound positive. You're neutral, I wanna hear the whole thing, but like, they're developing this, that's how it's gonna be. And maybe we might get a change here or there.
Okay.
Real positive.
If we can, Charlie? Yes, sir. Can you go back, Charlie?
You want to entertain a couple of questions about the pad?
Sure.
Because if you made it a cute little blue box there, but there's a whole lot more involved in that pad than there is. Explain later.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Can you indicate what the dates of these various steps are likely to be?
What's
Time in the future you're gonna have these things occur?
well, the top line is what we're going through right now. Okay. So I can't remember what. Honestly, I can't. I'd be lying to you if I told you, and I'm not going to do that. Okay. But there's a timetable for each one of them as it builds out. I don't have them right off the top of my head.
When you get to the last one there, what are we looking, how many months or years away?
For the first building, I would suspect probably a year and a half. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Who actually owns this property right now?
Rayonier, which is Radiant, is a subsidiary of Rayonier. They're the development arm for Rayonier. Okay. Okay, moving on. These key deliverables are in your developer's agreement, folks. We talk about the annexation, the PUD, utility, mobility agreements, the plan for water sewer services, beautification of St. Mary's Road, fire station, water storage, and service roads, complete the loop on Haddock Road, other road improvements when warranted, we'll talk about that, entry points, demonstrate the funding source capabilities. Radiant, submit the PUD annexation support and 20% of the funding for beautification plan. Dedicate the fire station property. Dedicate right-of-way, Haddock Road Fire Station wetland delineation. Determination of conservation areas and additional engineering support exit 1 improvements. Okay.
Do you have any idea where the
What is? We're going to talk about that. Yes, sir.
Green, not those guys who plant those tiny trees. And so basically, they're the ones that own it right now. And guess the problem is the things down here. So I guess trying to offload that from sell it to the city and keys maybe because at the end of the day, Rainier, I watched it, I figured it out. It was the guys from Buffalo, the Buffalo taxpayer. So I guess at this point they probably they don't have a need for it anymore.
No, sir. There's certain properties that they're recycling out or cycling out, not recycling, but cycling out. They have purchased other properties, other places that have got a different level of tree or something like that, and they're willing to look at this as far as development. Okay. Yes, sir.
Getting back to your public-private collaboration deliverable, I guess in the past, up to now, I've missed the fact, I didn't know that this is going to be some direct connection to Haddock Road somewhere in 2026. Is that right?
Yes, sir. We'll show you a slide here in a few minutes to show what we're talking about. Yeah, we're going to break down each one of those deliverables so you can see them.
The general question is there any plan or is there any possibility that besides Haddock Road, up to now, I thought most of the impact was going to be directly to St. Mary's Road, all of Peter Roads, the streets in and out of St. Mary's Road. Is there any concept plan or consideration that might hook up, through 240 or to some other major road other than St. Mary's Road? Are there any feeder roads in and out of that 1,800 acres that will come in other than St. Mary's Road?
That are city's responsibility.
That will be subject to traffic changes. Right now, I mean, when I look at the map.
Oh, that
I
you
only know
okay?
the fact
You're
that
talking about how
St.
we're
Mary's
affected.
Road was the main artery that allowed traffic in and out of this 1,800
Yes, sir.
acres. I noted here, from the first time for me, that there is some relationship to Haddock Road, correct? Relationship. So if you're going to get into detail,
Yes.
are there any other roads, including State Road 40, that have been considered as a direct link to this 1,800 acres?
Being affected by the 1,800 acres.
Directly through traffic, through roads.
Yes, we're going to talk about that as well.
So
We'll
the
talk
answer
about that
is
as well.
no or yes?
Sir? Well, I mean, they're connected to St. Mary's Road, so you're going to have an effect.
I'm talking about, all right, I'll wait for you. You
Okay.
understand my question? I'm trying to understand the traffic impact. This 1,800.
Okay,
acres.
let's get to that, and then we'll address it. Maybe I think I may be able to address it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's something else that a lot of you may not be aware because you don't read the paper or you don't whatever. That was not meant to be ugly, please. But one of the things the city of St. Mary's has been dealing with for some time, you know, we rehabbed, or we built that new treatment plant sitting over on Point Peter. The problem with that is we didn't do anything about some of the piping, especially coming off the west side of the city. So we've been underneath a EPD summons, if you will, to make necessary repairs to our sewer treatment system. Okay? So as a part of that, this plan, because it's on the west side, we're going to be able to take care of some of those some of those sewer issues that we have on the west side of the city at the same time and satisfy EPD. Everybody with me on that? So this is the first phase. Remember, we got two phases that we're dealing with on the project. The first phase, we've got a water plant, we've got lift stations, we've got force mains, we've got water main extensions, design and planning. Overall project, we're looking at the infrastructure being 65% of this overall project. Okay, 65%. All right, just the first phase is $19,383,000 or something like that. Okay, so there's benefit with the project on our sewer system all the way down. Okay, so we build something out by the hospital. This is going to be a benefit because our lift stations are going to be improved, increased sizes, larger force mains, and things of that nature. Okay. So, if you will, Charlie. Yes. Go back, Charlie. It's very hard to see. Where you see the red, yeah, the LS is lift station. Where you see the red delineated is the improvements to the existing sewer system. Okay? Yes, ma'am. I'm very sorry. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, this is going to be a challenge for me because I have a tendency to do it normal Robbieisms. Sewer goes downhill, okay? It'll only go downhill so far. Then this lift station pumps it up and sends it downhill again. And that's what it is to get it to where it needs to go to. It's not maybe an eighth of an acre. I don't even think it's that. If you've seen, if you go down Coleraine and where I can't think of what the apartments are, when you turn off the spur 40 on the Coleraine and you get just about to where the big bridge or the walkover, whatever we call it today. Back over on the left-hand side, just before you get to Sugar Mill, that's a lift station. There's also one right there at the middle school, St. Mary's Middle School, right there. That's a lift station.
And are the LSs that are in this map that are not along the red route, are they existing lift stations?
Yes, ma'am. There's 1, 2, 3. There's like 3 lift stations that are associated specifically with this project. Yes, ma'am. The TAD's going to pay for the repair of, yeah, and we're going to talk about TAD. Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So if we're building out sewer and water, and 3,000 living units, plus commercial, plus industrial, plus a hospital, the sewer mains and the water mains right now, they don't exist in that area. And aren't you gonna have to greatly increase the size from that area all the way through to the sewer plant?
There are, and that's what the red lines are indicating. But let's qualify, let's back up just a minute. There is a sewer line out there. There was I don't remember what you call it. There's I call it a packaged sewer plant that sits out there off of Haddock Road that has been mothballed since 2010, somewhere along there. Don't quote me on that. But it was mothballed. It was put in because we hit capacity on our old treatment plant. So we put that in there so we could build the new plant. Once the new plant was built, they installed a force main, which is just exactly what, because I knew that was coming. That was installed to take a load off because at the time Osprey was building up and blowing up, and we put that out there to do it. So that has been mothballed. So there's sewer lines out there. There's also water lines out there. They're just not big enough. Okay.
So that sewer plant could
It's going to take a portion. It's going to take a portion of that. Yes. Yes.
will the city have to purchase right of ways and property owners to extend on this?
We already, where you see the red lines, we already own the property. It's an existing line. Okay. All right. So, in phase 2, that's when we're going to see that little package plant that we talked about, treatment plant, see it expand as well. Okay. The thinking is to get the first round, get it to the treatment plant, and the second round, or I may have them backwards. Yes, that's right. No, I apologize. I did have it backwards. The treatment plant that's already there, out there by Haddock Road, will be expanded 500 million gallons a day. It's currently 500 million gallons a day, but we're going to have to expand it up to 1. And then on the phase 2, that's when we'll be getting it to Point Peter. Got them right now. Okay. But there's a lot of force mains that are going to be put in to help us, and you can see some of those numbers. Second phase is at $39 million. Charlie? This is the calculations on the usage of water and on sewer. You have it, and I apologize, it's very hard to read. But the impact, and if you look over to the right, this is not just our project. This is all the projects that are currently in works in the city of St. Mary's, and this is the impact that's going to be to our treatment plants and our water plants. Okay?
Have you been studying at all on the water table that might be affected in these areas for existing wells?
Say that again.
Has there been any study on any impact on existing wells as far as the water table for all of construction?
Don't know the answer to that. The only wells that would be impacted would be your sprinkler system.
everything else is on city water.
Right, so has there been a study
It
of how
shouldn't impact like that.
if the switch from well water to city water for our sprinklers, that would be a substantial increase in water costs. So that's what I was asking, is there, yeah.
I get it.
So that's what I was wondering if they've studied that at all.
Yes.
And taking that into consideration for this.
No, actually, this should not affect. This really should.
Well, your irrigation water comes from the same place your city water does. It's all the same reservoir right now.
Well,
The city gets their water out of the reservoir.
Right.
That's where your irrigation.
Our irrigation comes from the
well,
well.
it goes
Well,
one.
that's still the same reservoir.
Again, I'm very naive about this stuff,
Well,
clearly.
actually, the city water comes from a lot deeper than what
It's the same reservoir.
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay, Sam? You had your hand up? Oh, no. Okay, I'm sorry.
What is the difference between the gallons of water bill each month and the gallons of water put into the main each month by the water system? My question is, how much water is leaking, 12-inch main a day?
I don't have that number. I hope not. But I mean, being realistic, there's probably some. We don't, if you get a water main like we're aware of, usually on top of fairly quick.
And there's a geyser. So there are ways to survey an existing underground water treatment plant to find leaks. A 2-inch leak in a turn, a 12-inch pipe leaks 60,000 gallons an hour. So it should be easy to say, how many gallons have I built? How
Those-
many gallons